Hi, I'm Bridie O'Donnell. Welcome to Vibe Racing. Put your seatbelts on. Stage 6 of this year's Tour de France might just be the greatest day this sport has seen in a generation. Well, until next week anyway. Tadej Pogačar didn't just win over the Tourmalet, he buried Jonas Vingegaard by 2 minutes and 42 seconds. And he obliterated the all-time Strava KOM. Stay tuned because we're going to pull up his power file. The numbers are going to blow your mind. Plus, for the American in the mix, we're going to go deep on Sean Quinn's first week. Oh, and I have a new spicy take. Let's go.
Yo, the race just finished, but the breakdown's just begun. How the race was won, analyze the split-second stun. This is Vibe Racing. Vibe Racing! Yeah.
Let's talk about Stage 6, because what Tadej did on the Tourmalet might be the greatest performance we've ever seen in modern cycling. First, the mountain itself. The Tourmalet has featured in the Tour 89 times, which is more than any climb in history. And since 1980, it's been hors category, or outside classification. Stage 6 hit the Col d'Aspin first, then the Tourmalet's brutal eastern face. UAE treated the lower slopes like the World Tour version of an elimination race on the track, if it was in a heat wave outside in France. Riders were just taking turns on the front until half the pre-race favourites were cooked after La Mongie. Then, with more than 4 kilometres to the summit, Isaac Del Toro exploded off the front and took Pogačar with him. Del Toro led for around 300 metres, then he was done. It was just Pogačar, barely 10 seconds up on Vingegaard and Lipowitz at that point, and the rest of the GC favourites were littered back down the mountain. With 40 kilometres or 27 miles to go, Pogačar was in a familiar place, on his own, on the front. Vingegaard made one last desperate dig to close the gap before the summit, but he couldn't hold it, and by the top, he was 31 seconds behind Pogačar. But he was also 55 seconds clear of a group that contained Paul Sexas, Florian Lipowitz, and Isaac Del Toro, with Evenepoel, Ayuso, Skelmoser, Martinez, and Kuss a further 20 seconds back. Kuss and Del Toro were both at the back of their respective groups. That's about not wanting to tow their leaders' competitors back into contention. Then the descent. It was brutal in its own way, and Pogačar extended his lead over Vingegaard. So just think about that. He had 31 seconds on him by the top of the Tourmalet and a minute, more than a minute, over him at the bottom. The Evenepoel and the Sexas groups had merged around 10 miles to go, but they were still 1 minute and 48 seconds back. But this wasn't even the finish line. There was an 18 kilometre or 11 mile valley climb up to the finish, something that we as commentators had thought, oh, this won't be decisive. But he kept pulling away. Vingegaard held off the chasers for second place, mostly thanks to their complete lack of cohesion. More on that later. Evenepoel tried to sprint for the final spot on the podium, but Del Toro came around him and took third. Okay, let's talk about the Strava numbers. Pogačar scored multiple KOM segments in this stage, including on the Tourmalet, which he climbed in 43.08. He obliterated Bardet's old record by 4 minutes. But it wasn't just Tadej who had a good day. The top 7 fastest times of all time are all from that day. Pogačar was 1 minute and 22 up on the French superstar Sexas, and Tadej's BAM, his vertical meters climbed per hour, which we think of as the purest measure of climbing power, averaged 1,747. Oh, he broke the Strava record on the descent too, exceeding 100 kilometers per hour. So whether you're a fan or not, whether you're bored of him winning all the time, trust me, you need to appreciate this performance by this amazing athlete. We are watching Pogačar do what no racer has done since Eddie Merckx. He is at the top of his game, in the biggest budget team, with the best domestiques, dominating an extraordinary generation of riders. As Christian van der Velde said, he's the Tiger Woods, the Michael Jordan, or the Muhammad Ali of the sport. I don't know if he means all combined or individually. You get the gist. The rest of the long, hot first week saw Pedersen win stage 4 as a breakaway sprint into Foix, Coy surprised with his first Tour win on stage 5 into Pau, Merlier won back-to-back sprint stages in Bordeaux and Bergerac, and then Van der Poel dominated a ferocious breakaway to win stage 9. And in yellow, Tadej Pogačar. He's up 2 minutes and 42 over Jonas Vingegaard, heading into today's first rest day.
Americans in the mix, a new golden era, no fiction. Attacking in the climbs with tactical conviction. This is Vibe Racing. Vibe Racing! Yeah.
Well, there's never been so many American pros doing so much, and I am absolutely here for it. Sean Quinn has been the big story of the week, but it has been a bit of a roller coaster. He made the stage 4 break and finished 7th, and then he moved himself into second overall on GC, just 28 seconds off yellow. He held it through stage 5, then he got dropped on the Tourmalet, finishing 31st, then he bounced back 3 days later, 10th on stage 9. So resilient, and dare we say, he's in some rarefied air. It reminds me of another EF Education rider, a GC hopeful turned classic star. What's that? Oh, shout out to Nielsen Palace. He won a stage of Austria just last year, and that's been his first win in over a year. Don't forget, Sean Quinn is the only rider not named Quinn Simmons to win the US national title in the last 4 years. He won in 2024, beating Brandon McNulty in a photo finish. Speaking of Quinn Simmons, is there a more entertaining rider in the peloton? He seemed to animate every single breakaway in the first 9 days. Second on stage 4, doing double duty for Pedersen, but in my view, he was definitely the MVP. Then he was active in the decisive stage 9 split. Tactically, he's been incredibly savvy. And of course, he's doing it in the Stars and Stripes jersey. Oh, and the white bibs. Now that is a look that is very easy for us commentators to find in the peloton. And he's certainly using his brash confidence for good, supporting his teammate. Pedersen is at the moment the favourite to win the points classification jersey. Well, after his stage 2 heroics, Brandon McNulty followed up with a monster pull in the UAE train on stage 6. He did a 9-minute turn up the Tourmalet that basically shredded the field before Pogačar even attacked. There were only 13 riders remaining when he peeled off. Onto Sepp Kuss, and there are how many ways we try and say it in how many languages, he's probably the most reliable climbing domestique on earth. In stage 6, the hardest day yet, he finished 10th, right in the thick of the GC fight. So hold your fire, wait for week 3. Everyone else will be running on fumes and Sepp will just be being Sepp, helping Vingegaard. Well, Matthew Riccatello crashed on stage 3 and he lost more than half an hour. So his GC position is now not going to be as useful to his super teammate Sexas. So the tour hasn't yet been a dream start for Riccatello. He's hoping the tide turns for Matthew. Well, also stay tuned for more on the American women as the start list for the Tour de France Femme avec Zwift is being filled out. At this stage, Olympic road and track champion Kristen Faulkner has been named for the EF Education Easy Post squad. Racing starts on the 1st of August.
Spicy Bites!
Right, here's my spicy take for the week, but maybe it's not going to be spicy enough for you, so let me know. I want your feedback. But I don't think having 2 GC co-leaders on the same team to keep your options open is good for morale, it's good for team cohesion, or sponsor satisfaction. We're yet to see if it's going to be good for results. Let's not forget, they had 3rd last year. So you know I'm not talking about Pogačar and Del Toro. Nope, there is absolutely a clear leader there. I'm talking about the very spicy dynamic that's playing out just a little bit further down the paddock where all the buses are parked. Because it's rumoured that Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe paid the Soudal Quickstep team €7 million to buy out the contract of the dual Olympic and road world champion Remco Evenepoel. Then he signed his name on an actual contract for that team for around, we think, €6 million. Now, he had a DNF in last year's Tour de France. He won the World Time Trial Championships again, and then he's only had one World Tour win, which was Amstel Gold, before this Tour de France. Since then, he's had 10 weeks without racing on training camps. The other Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe leader, Florian Lipovitz, was 3rd in last year's Tour. He won the Best Young Rider. He's been performing well for the last 10 to 11 months, and he's actually been dominating stage races from February through to June this year, including winning the Tour of Slovenia. Well, for the first 9 stages, Lipovitz has been just quietly going about his business, while Remco is throwing grenades with some choice sound bites for the Belgian media. He kind of sounds somewhere between a petulant child and a trash-talking UFC fighter just relying on his former results. Look, it's giving us something to talk about, no doubt. But team management is having to spend quite a lot of time saying, everything's fine, there's nothing to see here. And I'm not sure how the other 6 teammates are feeling, but they're probably keeping their heads down at breakfast and in the bus. When Lipovitz was interviewed after stage 6, he said he thinks everyone is just racing for 3rd place, given the climbing legs of Pogačar and Vingegaard on the Tourmalet. Well, here's hoping that having 2 co-leaders on Red Bull doesn't cause a team implosion that ends up just rolling out the red carpet to make way for Sexas, Del Toro, Ayuso or Martinez, and they might take the final spot on the podium Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe might come away with 4th. Well, that's it for this week's Vibe Racing. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, share it with a cycling friend, share it with a friend who doesn't know about cycling. But I want to hear from you. What are your spicy takes from the week in bike racing? Drop them in the comments below. For the Vibe Racing team, I'm Bridie O'Donnell. See you next week.
This is Vibe Racing. Vibe Racing. We keep the culture live. Vibe Racing. Come on, let's ride.